All right, so you want to jump into the Toronto real estate market, huh? Well, we've got a whole stack of articles here, and let me tell you, it's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it's definitely a wild ride out there right now. But that's what we're here for, right? To help make sense of it all.
Absolutely. So, one of the things that jumped out to me was all these articles about a potential condo buyer's market in Toronto.
Right, right. Everyone's talking about that. And it is pretty striking, the sheer number of condos listed right now.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when you consider that a basic three-bedroom house, you're still looking at over $800,000.
It's crazy. But then again, I was reading this piece in the New York Times, and they were practically calling Toronto condos unlivable. So maybe that's why everyone's selling.
Yeah, that article definitely got people talking. But, we always like to look at the bigger picture here, right? And a REMAX report we've got suggests that, well, a lot of these sellers, they're kind of banking on the market bouncing back. Like, they're listing now, hoping to get a better price later.
So they're playing the long game. Interesting. But what does that mean for someone like our listener who's thinking of buying now?
Well, it could put you in a good position to negotiate. But, and this is important, don't just jump at the first deal you see. Really do your research. Look into the building, the management company, and don't forget those hidden costs, like those pesky maintenance fees.
For sure. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement and overlook those things. Speaking of different ways to get into the market, we've also got to talk about renting. Because I did see some good news about rent increases finally slowing down across Canada.
Yeah, it seems like things might be stabilizing a bit on the rental front. The national average is only up by about 2%. And some cities, like Ottawa, actually saw a tiny dip in rent for one-bedroom apartments.
Hey, every dollar counts, right?
Right?
But does this mean renters in Toronto can breathe a sigh of relief?
Well, not so fast. Toronto, always got to be different, right?
Right.
While the national trend is good to know, what really matters is the local market. And speaking of local markets, we came across this really interesting study from Concordia University predicting that Montreal rents could actually shoot up by over 100% by 2032.
Whoa, 106%. That's a huge jump. Why so high in Montreal?
It seems like it's a combination of things, a growing population, limited supply, it goes.
So even though rent increases might be slowing down in some parts of the country, that's not necessarily the case everywhere, especially not in a hot market like Toronto.
Exactly. If you're renting in Toronto, just, be prepared for the possibility of those increases.
Mm.
Don't get too comfortable just yet.
Got it. Knowledge is power, right? Okay, so we've covered condos, rentals, but there's another strategy that seems to be getting a lot of buzz in Toronto these days. Fixer-uppers. So is snagging that diamond in the rough a smart move in this market or a recipe for disaster?
Well, I'll tell you, it can be a bit of both. Fixer-uppers, they have that allure of a great deal. But yeah, you got to watch out for those hidden costs, those gotchas, like those home renovation shows. They don't always show you the whole picture, right?
Totally. It's never as easy as they make it seem.
Right. Like slapping on some fresh paint and calling it a day. Oh, yeah. If only it were that simple.
Yeah.
Though I'm glad we're talking about this now, before you're knee-deep in demo, because one of the biggest misconceptions is that a fixer-upper is always going to be cheaper in the long run. But those renovations, man, they can really add up. You got your materials, labor, permits. It all starts to snowball.
Oh, and don't forget about those unexpected surprises that always seem to pop up, like that leaky pipe hiding behind the perfectly good-looking tiles.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Always something, right? And speaking of hidden issues, let's talk about zoning bylaws in Toronto. Because that's something else that trips people up.
Okay, zoning in Toronto. Break it down for me. Like, I'm buying my first condo, which who knows, maybe I am.
Okay, so imagine this, right? You find this charming little bungalow, and you're thinking, boom, second floor addition, let's do this. But hold on. Toronto's zoning regulations might have other plans.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, see, those zoning rules, they're like the city's rule book for what you can and can't do with your property. So they dictate things like how high you can build, how far your house needs to be from the property line, even whether you can add that second suite you're dreaming of.
So that dream renovation could be dead in the water before it even begins if it doesn't fit the zoning rules.
It's a harsh reality. And in some cases, you might need what's called a variance, which is basically asking the city for permission to, break those rules.
But how likely are they to say yes?
Well, that's a whole other story. It can be a long and complicated process. You're talking public hearings, potential pushback from neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always easy.
So you're saying I can't just channel my inner Bob Vila and DIY my way to my dream home?
Well, I mean, some projects are definitely DIY friendly, but when it comes to major renovations, a lot of times you're going to need permits and inspections just to make sure everything's up to code.
And what happens if I skip those steps?
Well, you could end up facing some hefty fines. Or worse, they could even make you tear down all your hard work.
Okay, starting to get the picture. It's not just about having a vision, right? It's about understanding the rules of the game. But let's say I find a place, good bones, and I'm ready to take the plunge. What about financing? Is that the same as getting a regular mortgage?
Not exactly. Now, while you can definitely go the traditional mortgage route, there are also specialized loans out there designed specifically for fixer-uppers, things like purchase plus improvement mortgages.
Purchase plus improvement. Huh. Okay, I like the sound of that. What's the advantage there?
So basically, they bundle the purchase price of the property and your estimated renovation costs into one loan, which can definitely streamline things.
So less paperwork. I'm all for that.
Exactly. But, and there's always a but, right? Be prepared for some stricter lending criteria.
Oh, so they're going to scrutinize the project as much as they scrutinize me.
Pretty much. Lenders, they want to see a detailed plan, a realistic budget. They might even look at your experience with similar projects. Because at the end of the day, they need to know that you can handle it, both financially and logistically.
That makes sense. So having a good contractor on your side, I imagine, is crucial. And a good real estate agent, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think of them as your fixer-upper dream team.
Right.
And you know what? While we're on the subject of dream teams, there's another crucial member that people often overlook, and that's a qualified home inspector.
You're not talking about one of those quick walkthroughs, right? I mean, a real top-to-bottom X-ray vision kind of inspection.
Exactly. Because no matter how good a deal seems, you never want to skimp on the inspection. We're talking foundation to roof, plumbing to electrical, even checking for things like asbestos. You need a pro who's going to spot those potential problems before they become your expensive headaches.
Got it. No cutting corners on the inspection. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Condos, rentals, fixer-uppers. It's clear that the Toronto market has its own unique personality, let's say. But before we get too focused on the GTA, I do want to zoom out a bit and look at the bigger Canadian picture.
Yeah, for sure. You know, one trend we've been keeping an eye on is what's happening in Atlantic Canada. Those housing markets are really heating up right now, seeing some of the biggest price jumps in the country.
Really? Atlantic Canada, like Halifax, Fredericton, those places. What's driving that?
That's exactly it. Seems like a lot of people are looking for, more affordable options, a change of pace maybe. And those Atlantic provinces, well, they've got a lot to offer. Beautiful scenery, a bit more relaxed lifestyle. It's becoming a pretty attractive option for a lot of folks priced out of those bigger cities.
Makes sense. It's like, what's that game? Musical chairs. Except for the houses. But even with these shifts, even if prices are stabilizing in some places or people are moving to new areas, isn't affordability still a major issue for a lot of Canadians?
Why, absolutely. It's a huge concern. Even with these market trends, owning a home feels like an impossible dream for a lot of people. I mean, just saving up for a down payment, it's so tough, especially with the cost of everything else going up, up, up.
It's a real struggle. So what's being done about it? Are there any government programs or initiatives in place to help first-time buyers?
There are a few things. The feds, they introduced that first-time homebuyer incentive a while back, which is basically a shared equity mortgage thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to help with those down payments. And then there's also that tax on vacant homes owned by non-residents.
Right. I remember hearing about that. What's the thinking behind that one again?
Well, the idea is to discourage speculation,
Sure.
free up some inventory for actual people who want to live there.
Makes sense. But is it enough? Are these programs actually making a difference?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? There's definitely a lot of debate about how effective they are. Some folks, they say it's just a Band-Aid solution,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't address the root of the problem. Others think it'll take time, that we'll see a bigger impact down the road.
So a bit of a wait-and-see approach for now. What about those other ideas that get tossed around, like rent control or those stricter rules for foreign buyers? Any updates on that front?
Oh yeah, those are definitely hot topics. A lot of provinces are facing pressure to bring in some form of rent control, especially with those rent increases we were talking about earlier.
Right, to protect tenants, make sure people can actually afford to live somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But of course, it's not that simple, is it?
Because then you have landlords who are worried about their investments, right?
Sure. And some argue that rent control can actually, discourage new development or lead to landlords not maintaining their properties as well because they're not making as much money. It's a tough one for sure.
A real balancing act.
Yep.
And what about those foreign buyer regulations?
Another big one. Some cities, Like Vancouver, they've already implemented taxes on foreign buyers. But whether it's actually helping to cool down the market, well, the jury's still out on that one.
Sounds like there are no easy answers when it comes to this stuff.
You got that right. This real estate market, it's a complex beast.
That it is. Well, this deep dive has definitely been eye-opening, to say the least. We've covered so much ground, from condos to fixer-uppers to rent control, and I feel like we just scratched the surface.
We did. But hey, that's what we're here for, to break it all down, help you make sense of it all.
Exactly. So for our listeners who've been with us on this wild ride, any final words of wisdom from the expert?
Just remember, this market, it's constantly changing, right? What's true today might not be true tomorrow. So stay informed, stay adaptable, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Great advice. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the Canadian real estate market. Until next time,